It is done, Josephine. I did not ask for this, Voss.
Reginald Voss slapped a foreclosure notice across Josephine Calder's bakery door while the morning loaves were still warm behind the glass. 14 days, the banker announced, pressing the last brass tack beneath his thumb. If Josephine could not pay $860, he would take the shop her mother had built and sell it before August ended. Josephine stood between him and the threshold, a visibly obese woman in a flower-marked brown dress, holding her mother's ledger against her broad waist as half of Main Street watched. Then, a quiet miner named Amos Teague stepped out of the breadline. Everyone in Butte believed he owned nothing but his patched coat and pick. Voss looked afraid of him anyway. Josephine saw it, and opened the ledger before either man could speak. The page beneath her thumb carried her mother's careful hand: flour, yeast, lamp oil, wages, and 12 monthly payments to Voss's bank. Each figure had been ruled in blue pencil and checked twice. Josephine had learned that discipline at the same scarred work table where her mother taught her to shape dough. A bakery survived on pennies. Lose track of 3 sacks of flour in March, and there might be no coal for the oven in December. "My mother never told me of an $800 balance," Josephine said. Voss smiled for the witnesses. He was a narrow man of 50, with silver at his temples, polished boots, and the patient voice he used at church collections. "Grief makes gaps in every family's knowledge, Miss Calder. The note is lawful. Your mother renewed it last winter." "Then show me her renewal." "You may inspect it at the bank after noon." He said it too smoothly. The notice named the bakery, its oven, stock, and the narrow parcel beneath them, but not her mother's more valuable house. Voss wanted this corner. Amos remained beside the breadline, tall and rangy beneath a coat faded by ore dust. His beard grew unevenly along a sun-browned face, and an old burn curved over one knuckle. He did not crowd Josephine or speak for her. He only watched Voss fold his tack hammer. "You heard her," Amos said at last. "She asked to see the note." Voss's smile tightened. "A bank matter does not concern a day laborer." "Then you've no reason to fear daylight on it." The street went still. Josephine closed the ledger. "Mr. Teague, I can answer for myself." Amos met her eyes and stepped back at once. "Yes, ma'am." The obedience startled her. Voss laughed and walked toward the bank. Josephine pulled down the notice. The tack tore a clean hole through the word possession. Inside, the heat from the brick oven pressed against her face. Her 2 assistants, 14-year-old Ruth Bell and Ruth's widowed aunt, Clara, had stopped wrapping loaves. Josephine set the notice face down. "We open on time," she said. "No customer leaves hungry because Mr. Voss enjoys an audience." For 3 hours, she kneaded, counted, sold, and smiled. Her large body moved through the narrow bake room with long practice. She braced a hip against the flour bin, carried trays against full upper arms strong from years of work, and turned between the cooling racks without disturbing a crust. People who saw only her broad waist and prominent belly missed the precision of her hands. Amos waited until the line was gone. As he had every morning for nearly a year, he placed 2 pennies on the counter for yesterday's loaf. Josephine pushed one back. It was stale. It was bread. It was half price. His mouth almost smiled. He accepted the penny, then set a folded county map beside it. No claim marks showed on the outside. "Voss has been asking who owns the service lane behind your oven," he said. "The lane belongs to the parcel. He asked the recorder twice this month." Josephine studied him. "Why were you at the recorder's office?" Amos's gaze shifted to the windows where Voss's bank rose across the street in red brick. "That answer could cost more than a loaf." "Then keep it until you can afford plain speech." She handed him his bread. He took the rebuke without anger. At the door he paused. "Don't sign anything at the bank." "I had not planned to." "Good." His fingers tightened around the loaf. "And if he shows you a note, Look at the witness before you look at the amount. At noon, Josephine crossed Main Street alone. Voss received her in an office paneled with dark wood and offered a chair whose arms were too narrow. She remained standing. He placed a note on his desk beneath a glass weight. The signature looked like Eleanor Calder's. Josephine's chest ached at the familiar slope of the E. The paper claimed her mother had borrowed $600 the previous November, secured by the bakery parcel, at interest that now made the balance $860. A witness's name curled at the bottom, Silas Wren, Voss's former clerk, who had died in a shaft collapse in January. Josephine did not touch the page. "The first loan was $400 in 1884, she said. "My mother paid every month." Then she borrowed again. "Why is the paper cut from the same blue stock you began using in March?" For one instant, Voss forgot to look sympathetic. Josephine knew the stock because the bakery bought wrapping paper from the same stationer. Last winter, the bank's notes had been cream. He recovered. "Paper is paper. And dead men make convenient witnesses?" Voss lifted the glass weight. "Take care, Miss Calder. Suspicion will not stop a lawful sale. A practical woman would consider my alternative." He slid a purchase offer across the desk. $300 for the building, the ovens, and the lane, with the claimed debt forgiven. It would leave Josephine with nothing but her mother's recipes and whatever she could carry. "You printed this before you posted the notice," she said. The date at the top was 3 days old. "I prepared for your good sense." Josephine turned and left without signing. She did not breathe fully until the bank door shut behind her. That evening she opened every account book her mother had kept since 1884. Clara brewed coffee while Ruth sorted receipts by month. Near midnight, Josephine found the first break. Her mother's cash book recorded a final payment of $40 on the original loan in October. The next page began November with no balance brought forward. Yet Voss's statement treated the old loan as unpaid, added a second advance, and charged interest on both. "Could your mother have forgotten to write down the new money?" Clara asked gently. "She might forget her shawl," Josephine said. "She did not forget $600. In a biscuit tin beneath the desk, they found 11 stamped receipts. The 12th was missing. Each bore a serial number. October's receipt ended in 412. Voss's supposed November note bore the bank number 411. The new debt had been entered backward. Josephine felt the room tilt, then steadied herself against the work table. A mismatch was not yet proof. Voss could call it a clerk's error. He could claim her mother received cash off the books. Josephine drew 3 columns on a fresh sheet: what the bakery paid, what the bank acknowledged, and what the bank now claimed. By dawn, the difference was no longer a feeling. It was a pattern. At 6, Amos arrived to find no bread in the front case and Josephine asleep over the ledger. He did not wake her. He split kindling, coaxed the oven fire higher, and waited outside until Clara opened the door. When Josephine woke, she found coffee beside her hand and Amos on the back step, repairing the loose hinge of a flower chest. "Clara said you asked before touching it," she said. "It wasn't my hinge." She sat across from him. "Why does Voss want my lane?" Amos put down the screwdriver. "Because it is the only wagon approach wide enough to reach the old Nolan assay yard without crossing company ground. The yard has been empty for years. It won't stay empty." From inside his coat, he removed a folded location certificate and a small canvas packet. He opened the packet just enough to reveal quartz stained dark with iron and threaded by a dull yellow seam. "Gold?" Josephine whispered. "Enough to matter. I found the vein above Basin Creek with 2 partners last winter. One died of fever, the other sold his interest to me and went east. I filed a notice under the name A.T. Mercer so claim jumpers would keep looking for Amos Teague, the poor fool who rents a bunk by the week." "Is Teague not your name?" "It was my mother's. Mercer was my father's. Both are mine." His location certificate had been accepted but not yet copied into the public index. An assayer from Helena was due within 10 days. If the vein proved valuable, the Nolan Yard and Josephine's service lane would become the cleanest access from town. "Voss knows," she said. "He knows enough. His clerk followed me from the recorder's office." Josephine looked at the claim paper, then at the hands that bought day-old bread 1 penny at a time. "And you could pay the debt?" "If I sold part of the claim before the assay, yes, at a poor price." There it was. Rescue laid on the table like another contract. Shame rose hot in her face. "I will not trade my mother's shop from one man's control into another's." Amos did not protest. He folded the certificate. "I didn't ask you to. You meant to offer. I meant to offer a choice." He spoke carefully. "I can pledge the claim with the court clerk as surety for a temporary hearing. That may stop Voss from taking possession until the records are examined. You keep the bakery. You run the case. If you lose, my claim pays the judgment and I lose it. You owe me no share of your property." "Why would you risk that?" His eyes went to the oven wall. "Because your mother fed me the week I arrived in Butte with no wages, because you did the same and pretended you were selling stale bread, and because Voss is counting on each of us believing poor means powerless." Josephine wanted to trust him. That frightened her more than Voss's notice. Trust could hide a price until it was too late. Her mother's secret loan had taught her that. She slid the claim certificate back. "Not yet," she said. "First, I find out whether my figures can stand without your gold." Amos nodded. "Tell me what you need carried, witnessed, or left alone." That became their bargain. Mr. Pike confirmed that the bank had ordered blue note paper in March, not November. Afraid of losing Voss's business, he refused to swear to it. Josephine bought 1 sheet from the batch and had him date the invoice. It was only corroboration, but it could survive his courage. Next, she visited Silas Wren's widow. Martha Wren lived above a laundry with 3 children. Voss had already told her that helping Josephine might end the small bank pension he paid after Silas's death. Josephine placed no questions before her until she had helped fold the steaming sheets. "Silas brought his worry home," Martha finally said. "He said Mr. Voss made him copy old accounts into a new book. He kept a teller's blotter because he feared blame." "Do you have it?" Martha shook her head. "Silas returned it to the bank the morning he died. But he copied 1 line on the back of our coal receipt." The receipt recorded Eleanor Calder's October payment and the words "paid in full" copied in Silas's square hand. Josephine's knees weakened. Martha caught her elbow. "Use my name," the widow said. "If he takes the pension, I will wash more sheets." Josephine understood then that evidence always had a human cost. Voss struck back before sunset. The flour wagon passed the bakery without stopping. The supplier had received a bank warning that Calder Bread House was insolvent and would be denied further credit. Josephine had flour for 4 days. Amos found her counting sacks. "I can buy flour," he said. "No, Josephine. If you buy my stock, Voss will tell the town the bakery survives on a miner's charity. I need customers, not a benefactor." She walked to the miners' union hall with 12 sample loaves and her cost book. Butte's shafts employed men from Ireland, Cornwall, Canada, and half a dozen states. 6,000 workers could eat a town bare before breakfast. Josephine proposed prepaid weekly bread tokens at a price below company store rates. The union steward doubted she could supply 200 loaves a day. Josephine showed him oven capacity, flour yield, coal cost, and delivery times. She had already arranged 3 neighborhood women as paid morning help if orders reached 150. "I am not asking you to save my shop," she said. "I am asking you to buy better bread for less money." The steward ordered 180 loaves for Monday. Outside the hall, Amos leaned against a hitching post. "You knew they'd agree?" "I knew the figures did." "That is not the same thing." "It is the part I can control." His quiet admiration made her more aware of him than praise would have. He had carried the sample baskets but said nothing inside. He had let her make the sale. On the 6th day, they went to the county recorder. The deputy said a private bank's books could not be opened on accusation alone. Josephine needed sworn evidence and a bond before the territorial district judge would issue an order delaying possession. The deadline had tightened around them. Mr. Pike still would not swear. Martha would, but one copied line could be attacked. Josephine chose to accept Amos's surety. They stood at the recorder's counter while Amos revealed the claim under both his names. The deputy's eyebrows rose when he saw the location. Amos signed an affidavit stating the claim would answer for any valid Calder debt during the hearing. The pen paused above the paper. He looked at Josephine. Once this is indexed, men will ride for Basin Creek. His secret was protection against claim jumpers. Trusting her had stripped that protection away. "You may still walk out," she said. "So may you." Josephine signed the petition. Neither of them had trapped the other. The judge granted a 7-day stay and ordered the bank to produce Eleanor's original note, the daily cash journal, and Silas Wren's teller blotter. Voss received the order in his lobby before a dozen depositors. His public mask did not break, but the hand holding the page trembled. That night, Amos slept on a flour sack beside the bakery's back door. Claim rumors had already spread. 2 strangers had asked where Josephine kept the certificate, not knowing it was sealed at the courthouse. She brought him coffee. "There is a cot in the storeroom. You set a boundary about men owning space in your shop. I set a boundary about men owning the shop. A cot is not a deed." He followed her inside. When she handed him a blanket, their fingers brushed. He drew back before the touch could become an assumption. "My father lost a claim to a forged transfer," he said after a while. "He chased the man who took it and died in a saloon fight. I spent 20 years believing the only safe thing was a secret no one could steal. And now half of Butte knows yours. You needed it in daylight." Josephine sat on the opposite flour bin. "My mother hid the loan because she thought worry was something a mother should carry alone. I was angry with her for 3 days. Now I think she was ashamed. You can love someone and still refuse the harm their silence leaves." The words held no polished wisdom. They sounded learned at cost. Josephine reached across the narrow space and laid her hand over his scarred knuckles. He did not turn it into a claim. He simply let her choose the length of the touch. At midpoint, the court-ordered books changed the case. The supposed November note was not merely a renewed debt. It was part of a pattern. Josephine found 7 small businesses whose paid loans had been carried forward, enlarged, and secured against parcels along the proposed milling route. Voss had selected widows, immigrants, and owners he believed could not read his accounts. The opening humiliation had been camouflage for a land scheme. But Voss had removed 3 pages from the teller blotter. Eleanor's line was among them. He claimed Silas had stolen the leaves before his death. Martha's copied receipt now looked less like proof and more like something Voss could call a grieving widow's invention. Josephine spent a night comparing bindings. The missing leaves had left thread stubs, but one narrow strip remained caught beneath the cord. On it appeared the bottom half of a red bank stamp and the upper curve of a number 2. Her October receipt carried the same stamp position. Still, it was not enough by itself. Then Ruth, listening from the bakeroom doorway, asked why Voss's daily cash journal showed the bank vault balanced on the day Eleanor had supposedly taken $600. Josephine went still. If $600 left the bank, the cash total should have fallen, or another account should show the source. It did neither. The note described money that had never moved. They had their proof mechanism, but they needed someone with authority to explain the bank totals. The only independent accountant near Butte worked for a mining company whose credit Voss controlled. He refused. Amos offered to ride to Helena for another examiner. The round trip could take most of the remaining time, and claim jumpers were already moving toward Basin Creek. "If you go," Josephine said, "you may lose the vein. If I stay, you may lose the bakery. The claim is yours, and the choice is mine." Before dawn, he rode north with copies sealed by the deputy. Josephine watched until hoofbeats disappeared, feeling the shape of mutual risk. He was not saving her with gold. He was risking gold so her work could be heard. Voss used Amos's absence. He sent a constable with a new order alleging that Josephine was removing secured property from the bakery. The man began tagging the mixing trough and cooling racks. Josephine read the order. It authorized an inventory, not removal. She planted herself between the constable and the oven, her substantial silhouette filling the narrow passage. "You may count," she said. "You may not carry." When he reached for a rack, 20 miners waiting for prepaid loaves stepped closer. Josephine raised one floury hand. "No threats! We win this with witnesses." The constable counted and left. Her restraint prevented Voss from turning resistance into an excuse to close the shop. On the 12th day, the oven's draft failed. Someone had packed wet clay into the rear flue during the night. Smoke rolled through the bake room. Josephine sent Ruth and Clara outside, shut the fuel vent, and used the service lane to reach the clean-out hatch. The lane Voss wanted saved the building. With 2 union men bracing the ladder, she cleared the clay and relit the fire. They lost 1 batch, not the business. In the clay, she found fibers from a bank coal sack. She bagged them, but did not mistake sabotage for proof of the false note. It showed pressure, nothing more. The hearing began on the 14th morning. Voss expected Josephine to arrive frightened or absent. Instead, she entered the Silver Bow courtroom carrying 3 ledgers, 12 receipts, a stationer's invoice, a flour order book, and a single page she had ruled by hand. Martha Wren walked beside her. Behind them came shopkeepers whose accounts carried the same impossible balances. Amos's chair remained empty. The judge asked whether Josephine wished to request a delay. She looked at the clock. If she waited for Amos, Voss would say a man's arrival made her case. Her figures were already true. "No, Your Honor, I am ready." Voss's lawyer displayed Eleanor's signature and called Josephine an emotional daughter trying to escape an honest debt. Josephine agreed that the signature resembled her mother's. "A copied signature is meant to resemble the original," she said. "Money is harder to imitate." She placed the daily cash journal beside the note. In plain language, she led the court through the bank's own totals. No $600 left on the date written. No corresponding debit existed. The serial number on the alleged November note preceded the October paid receipt. The paper had not been purchased until March. The torn blotter strip aligned with the stamp on Eleanor's receipt. Silas's copied coal receipt confirmed the paid balance, and Martha swore how it came to exist. Voss attacked each piece alone. Josephine had built them to stand together. Then he made his final move. He claimed Eleanor had received gold coin from his private cash box outside the journal. "Did you record that private advance anywhere?" the judge asked. Voss produced a small memorandum book. Josephine saw the trap at once. The amount was entered, but the running balance below it was wrong. Voss had added 600 to the page without changing the total carried onto the next leaf. She asked permission to approach. With chalk, she copied 4 lines onto the board and performed the addition. The courtroom murmured. "Mr. Voss," Josephine said, "you forged the debt and forgot to teach the next number to lie." The door opened behind her. Amos entered with a gray-haired accountant from Helena and the county deputy who had met them on the road. His coat was torn at one shoulder, not from a gunfight, but from 2 days of hard riding through rain and mud. He stopped beside the back bench. He did not interrupt Josephine's proof. The accountant reviewed the totals under oath. His conclusion was narrow and devastating. The bank's own books showed no advance to Eleanor Calder, while the altered memorandum had been inserted after later balances were written. The judge voided the lien, continued the order protecting the bakery, and referred the records for a territorial inquiry. He also ordered an examination of the 7 related accounts. Voss's polished calm finally failed. "This town was built by men willing to seize opportunity." Josephine closed her ledger. "You mistook other people's work for an opportunity." The bank's directors removed Voss before sundown to keep depositors from emptying the vault. In the weeks that followed, the territorial prosecutor charged him with falsifying records and fraudulent conversion. The widows' and shopkeepers' liens were suspended, then canceled where the audit showed the same scheme. Justice did not arrive as a cheering miracle. It arrived line by line, witnessed, copied, and entered where one man could not erase it. Amos's essay confirmed a valuable gold vein, though not the mountain of easy wealth rumor had promised. He sold a modest share, enough to secure the claim and pay his partner's obligations. He offered Josephine the $860 anyway. She refused it. Then she offered him a business proposition. Calder Bread House would provide meals to the Basin Creek crew at her standard contract rate. Amos could rent the service lane during off hours until he built another route. Every term went into writing, every column balanced. "And if I want something not listed in the contract?" he asked. They stood in the bakery after closing, lamplight resting on the worn work table. Josephine knew what he meant. This time, trust did not feel like surrender. "Ask plainly." "May I court you?" She let him wait long enough to understand that the answer belonged entirely to her. "Yes," she said, "but day-old bread remains half price." By the first snow, the bakery employed Clara, Ruth, and 4 other women at honest wages. The miners' bread tokens hung in neat bundles by the register. Amos came each morning, sometimes from Basin Creek, sometimes from the cot he now used only when Josephine invited him to stay late over coffee. He never called her salvation. She never called him fortune. On the anniversary of Eleanor Calder's death, Josephine opened the old ledger to its final page. Beneath her mother's last careful total, she wrote a new line in blue pencil. Calder Bread House, owned free and clear by Josephine Calder. Amos stood beside her, not in front of her, holding a warm loaf wrapped for the road. The hole Voss's tack had made in the door remained visible above the latch, but the door itself stood open, and the whole street smelled of bread. Prairie Rose, here. Josephine's victory was not that a man with a hidden claim arrived carrying enough value to rescue her. It was that he respected the work she had already done, risked something real so her voice could reach the room, and then stood back while she proved the truth. Dignity often looks quiet, a careful column, a boundary spoken without apology, a hand offered without closing into a fist. When has someone's trust helped you use your own strength instead of replacing it? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would truly like to hear what earned trust has looked like in your life.